Hey, welcome back, students. In this video, I want to go ahead and talk to you briefly about Chapter 4 and just provide a great overview of the big picture with regards to this chapter. And so in Chapter 4, one of the main things that we're going to deal with is we're going to deal with this concept of solubility. So we're going to need to know whether a compound dissolves in another compound. So we're going to be introducing some terminology for you here in this chapter that deals with solutes and solvents. We're also going to be dealing with concentrations, and we're going to learn how to calculate that. But within the context of this discussion in this chapter, we're also going to be talking about a couple of other reactions. And one of the main reactions we're going to deal with here are precipitation reactions. We're also going to deal with acid-base reactions and also oxidation reduction reactions and the balancing of these reactions. So these are new concepts that you're going to explore in this chapter. My strong advice is make sure you read it thoroughly before we get going. But in this chapter, we're going to apply the principles of solubility into the discussion of reactions. And so what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things? That means not only are you responsible for balancing reactions, and so let's go ahead and put this in the second section here. I'm going to go ahead and erase this and bring it down here so I can break it down for you. So not only is it important that you know how to balance reactions, okay, you're also going to need to know how to identify the limiting reactant. And use that essentially to make a prediction on the products. And so that it's going to be either the moles of a product formed or the mass in grams of products formed. Okay. The other item here is not only is it important for you to know how to balance these things, but we're also going to have to know about the two reactions I mentioned here. We're going to be looking at precipitation and what this really means here is that you're going to be able to form a precipitate, and it usually shows up as a solid. Something is usually a liquid when you mix them together, so you might have two liquids being mixed together, but then when they mix, there's a solid that forms, and this can be either yellow, red, green. It depends on the compound you're mixing, but essentially you're going to see some kind of precipitate. Some solid product that is formed, and you can filter it out and collect it, weigh it after you've dried it, and then you know how much you actually have. Okay. The other reaction that we mentioned just briefly here is the acid-base reaction. And so abbreviate that as RxNS. Okay. And when we deal with the acid-base reactions here, the other item that you need to be very familiar here are the redox. And so the redox reactions are essentially this is an abbreviated form for oxidation and reduction reactions. Okay. And you'll need to learn how to balance these. So it's very important that we engage in a tremendous amount of exploration on your own. In addition to the exploration we're going to do in class, make sure you know how to do, at the very least, going into this chapter, you know how to do the balancing of reactions. You can identify the limiting reactant and identify the products of a reaction when you're provided information that identifies the limiting reaction. And in this chapter, we're going to make sure that you understand fully how to identify precipitation reactions, identify acid-base reactions, and balance those reactions when we consider the redox sort of things. Okay, so that's the big picture here with Chapter 4. And the other item that's a very big item here is you also need to know about solubility. Okay, some compounds will dissolve in other compounds, some of them will not. And so when we talk about solubility, one of the main things that we're dealing with here is going to be either a precipitate, we'll abbreviate that as PPT, or you're going to have ions because something is aqueous. So over the next couple of video lessons that we're going to develop for you, we're going to bring together all these major concepts that I just briefly mentioned here. We'll address them step by step so that you know exactly what we're dealing with here in Chapter 4. We're going to make a quick work of it all, but you are expected then to make sure you read the chapter in advance so that you're up to date on what we're talking about so it does not become too much of a mystery for you. So if you haven't already subscribed, please go ahead and do that. Go ahead and subscribe. Keep watching, keep learning, and we'll see you in the next video.